What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be talking about CoD 2026, heavily rumored to be Modern Warfare 4 at this point. I'm just going to be calling it Modern Warfare 4 from this point on. And in today's video, as many people have been requesting, I wanted to share my pre-reveal wish list for this game. Keeping in mind, as that suggests, of course, nothing has been officially revealed about this game. Again, we don't even know if it's called Modern Warfare 4. I suspect the marketing is going to be starting up fairly soon for this game, and maybe I will make like an updated wish list that's a little more targeted to the things that we learn about the game early on. But today, this is going to be more of a general wish list, largely based on Infinity Ward's previous two Call of Duty games, so Modern Warfare 2019 and Modern Warfare 2, as well as many lessons that I just hope they've learned over recent years with Call of Duty in general. And one last thing to keep in mind is this wish list is not just based on what I personally want as a player, but also what I feel is necessary in the current state of the franchise to optimize overall success for the game. And speaking of the current state of things, at least as I see it, as of right now, it seems the general level of interest for Call of Duty in general, not just Black Ops 7, but Call of Duty as a brand, it does appear to be quite low at the moment for Call of Duty. And the scary thing is I'm seeing a whole lot of apathy toward the franchise, rather than like passionate feedback and complaints, and that is a much bigger cause for concern. So I definitely think the franchise needs a big wake up, a big shake up, and it has been rumored at least that Modern Warfare 4 is going to be coming with some big engine improvements, and apparently a notable leap forward, similar to what we saw with Modern Warfare 2019, where that was quite a big leap forward. I don't know if we're going to be seeing that much of a leap forward, but it is also rumored that this year they are dropping support for the previous generation of consoles, and therefore if they go that route, that may remove some limitations and really allow them to push the limits even further. So with all of that in mind, with the assumption that this is going to be at least a bit of a leap forward and not just a continuation like many of the recent games have been, let's get into the first big point that I want to make, and this is something that I think is very important. This is the general presentation of the game. In many ways, this is more important than the gameplay design when it comes to the overall success and interest that you capture early on with the game. Not only in the lead up to it, but also with the game itself once you boot it up. But with this area, a really common sentiment I've been seeing over recent years, and I've also felt this plenty myself, is this franchise has become a bit of a joke because it fails to maintain a reasonably serious tone, and there's just far too many silly things that end up in the game. Now, of course, I know this isn't new to the franchise. We've seen silly stuff in Call of Duty for a very, very long time, and I don't expect Call of Duty to be 100% serious or authentic like a milsim. And it's also clear they make a lot of money selling the silly stuff because you see that stuff appear in the game all the time, so people are clearly buying it. But I think this has come at a huge cost to the overall brand identity with how far they've taken a lot of this stuff. And I definitely feel, especially in the current market, there is a huge demand for a much more serious and gritty tone with an FPS game. And I think Battlefield 6 was a prime example of this. So many CoD players really early on, and like in the lead up to the release of Battlefield 6, they were so hyped for the game, and a huge part of that is it was a game that felt like it was made for adults. It had more of a serious tone to it. It was an actual like military shooter. And looking back, I genuinely feel that is one of the biggest reasons for the massive early success of Modern Warfare 2019 as well. Obviously alongside the big graphical leap forward. That's the type of thing that I feel really captures the attention of the masses. Whereas the silly stuff does the opposite. It does sell well and it does make them money in the short term, but I feel it has a negative long-term impact, and they have been leaning too far in that direction in recent years, and I think we need to see a reset back on that to try to emulate that success that Modern Warfare 2019 saw early on. So that's my big hope, is this year they are really going to be pushing for that more gritty, realistic, authentic military shooter feel and art style and tone. But that's not the only aspect of presentation that I think is important, and something that I think is probably a little underrated here that I would also really like to see is a complete overhaul to the menu and UI structure. And the reason behind this is since Modern Warfare 2019, we've been essentially using just different iterations of the same core UI look and structure. Of course, they've made some changes and improvements over the years, and they do tailor it visually to fit with the current game to a degree, but in my eyes, there's really not enough of a difference there. And as crazy as it might sound, I think this does have a pretty big impact on how people feel toward the game when they first boot it up. Even if it is subconsciously, if they boot up the game and it's just like a polished version of the same menu and the same UI structure that we've been looking at for the past, I don't know, 6 years now, 7 years, then it's really not going to feel like that leap forward. And instead, it's just going to feel like yet another Call of Duty game, same as the last ones. Whereas if we see a complete redesign and overhaul to that, that would really go a long way in setting that tone as a leap forward and not just a continuation of the same old Call of Duty we've been playing. So as much as I personally care about gameplay more than anything, I think presentation is a huge area that they need to focus on if they want this game to truly feel like a proper leap forward. But with that part covered, let's get into some more of the gameplay items, the stuff that on a personal level I care about far more. And I think one of the biggest gameplay related things that needs attention here is movement. This is one of those areas where I personally like fast movement. I like the advanced movement games. I don't mind the wall jumping in Black Ops 7, for instance. I like Omni movement. But in saying that, I don't think that's what's best for the franchise. And I think they have drifted too far in the direction of crazy movement techniques, and this has drastically harmed the more casual audience, which do make up the masses. And if we want the game and the franchise to be very successful, the core gameplay loop and the core movement systems can't be tuned in a way that immediately pushes those players away because they simply can't keep up and have no interest in learning how to keep up. And to be clear with this, I'm just talking about certain movement techniques and movement speeds. And while there is often overlap, there is a difference between fast movement and a movement-dominated skill gap versus a fast-paced shooter. You can still have a fast-paced game without movement techniques themselves being the dominant form of a skill gap. And that's what I'd like to see. Still the ability to play the game in a very fast-paced manner and rush aggressively and not lean so heavy in the direction of like camping being the dominant playstyle. I'm not saying I want that. I just think some of the movement techniques need to be dialed back so casual players aren't immediately put off by the game. So I do think we've had our fun with Omni movement, but that likely needs to go. And I suspect it's not going to be there for an Infinity Ward game. Also, of course, wall jumps, that's got to go as well. Again, I personally kind of like the wall jumps, but for many people, it's the primary reason that they don't like the gameplay of Black Ops 7. So yeah, I think that needs to go. Then I know this seems unlikely since Infinity Ward was the first one to introduce this to the franchise, but I would like to see no tactical sprint in this next Call of Duty game, at least not without a perk. I'm fine with it being added as a perk, but I like the consistency of not having tac sprint. Of course, you have the faster base sprint speed to compensate like we see in Black Ops 7, so you can still get around the map very effectively without it. But I like this because it keeps things more controlled, it prevents some of those crazy movement bursts from taking place, while making route timings far more consistent, which can contribute to better map flow overall. And then on top of that, another positive benefit there is it just gives a more consistent sprint out time. That's also a lower sprint out time than you'd experience with tac sprint, which means people feel less of a need to rely on things like sliding into gunfights in order to compensate for those much higher sprint out times when in a tactical sprint. And speaking of slide, that's another area I think they need to just dial back a little bit, but not to the level of Modern Warfare 2. I feel like Modern Warfare 2 had too many penalties attached to the slide, whereas in my opinion, I think it's just mainly the slide speed and duration need to be kept in check so they're not too crazy. But the slide should still be there, and it should still be a viable, aggressive option. Just not the option where you feel the need to be sliding everywhere you go, and every time you approach a corner, the right move is to always just slide around that corner. I think it would be best for the franchise, big picture and long term, if they distance themselves a little bit from that. Honestly, I think Modern Warfare 2019 had it at a pretty good level, where sliding was a very viable option for aggressively challenging people, but you didn't really see people just slide all over the map constantly. So I think aiming for that level of slide would probably be ideal. Now, in addition to that, something I feel that we've lost with Call of Duty and we haven't experienced for quite some time that I think would have a positive impact that would allow people to feel comfortable playing more aggressively without having these crazy camera breaking movement techniques is faster strafe speeds by default, or at least more opportunity to build in the direction of having faster strafe speeds without significant penalties being attached to doing that. I think aim down sight strafing around corners to play aggressively should be a very viable technique, and if they were to balance things in that way again, I think it would help reduce that reliance on feeling the need to slide around every corner or jump shot around every corner. I remember in the early days of CoD, you could get pretty crazy strafe speeds, especially if you're using something like the Stalker perk, for instance. And it felt great being able to confidently strafe around corners and challenge gunfights. And then on the receiving end, I think it's much more preferable to deal with people that are strafing corners rather than people that are flying around corners with a slide or a jump shot. So if they were to make those aim down sight strafe speeds much more viable outside of very specific niche builds, then I think that could be very beneficial to the overall gameplay loop and help compensate for the reduced movement techniques that I talked about earlier, assuming they are going to go that route, which I believe they will be. So that's my take on movement. I definitely don't want the pendulum to swing way too far in the other direction to the point where it's just a super slow paced game and the dominant playstyle is just sitting in a corner or locking down a building. I would still like the general pacing of the game to be balanced in a way where it's fast-paced and there are great options available for aggressive playstyles. I just think the franchise does need to start getting away from the crazy movement techniques totally dominating the skill gap. As for the next section here, this is just talking about gunplay and weapon handling. Essentially, I'd really like them to just aim for Modern Warfare 2019 when it comes to this. There were many things I really didn't like about that game, but gunplay is not one of those things. They really did a good job with it. I feel like they had a great balance between like recoil without having crazy visual recoil. Please don't go the Modern Warfare 2 route with the insane visual recoil. Let us see what we're shooting at as we're shooting. I don't mind actual recoil and having to control that, but I just don't want my camera bouncing around like crazy to the point where your eyes can't keep up and you're just sort of spraying rounds down range in the general direction of where you recently saw the enemy player, but now you can't see anything. But that was just a note I wanted to include here. I think aiming for the general weapon handling and gunplay of Modern Warfare 2019, that's a gold standard for an Infinity Ward game. Next up, another area that is very important, and I'm especially bringing this up because we're going into an Infinity Ward CoD, this is footstep audio. And the first point I want to make here is before we talk about perks or field upgrades or anything, I think the most important thing is base footstep audio should be reasonable. And by reasonable, I mean they should be audible, especially if somebody's sprinting in a close quarters situation. Yeah, you should hear those footsteps like every single time. However, I feel it's unreasonable to be able to clearly hear footsteps 30 meters away through a wall while there's gunfire going off around you. And that's something you could do in Modern Warfare 2019, and to a bit of a lesser extent in Modern Warfare 2. And I'm really hoping for this next game, we don't see a repeat of that. That causes so many issues with the pacing of the game, and I've talked about this topic in great detail. In fact, I made a dedicated video on this. I will leave that link down below if you want to hear my thoughts on this in more detail. But I think when it comes to footsteps, that's the most important part. And then on top of that, ideally, I would like to see a ninja perk in the game, as well as a field upgrade. So you have those two different options. And when it comes to having that ninja perk, I know some Infinity Ward fans are against this, but if footsteps are balanced appropriately, which was the first step, as I mentioned, then the ninja perk won't be a crutch. It won't be something you feel the need to use in a respawn game mode, at least. You might feel the need to use it in Search and Destroy, for instance, but that's always been the case with CoD. But that's something I would ideally like to see. If Infinity Ward is dead set, though, on not having the ninja perk, and it is going to be field upgrade only as your option for quieter footsteps, please don't make us have to experience an animation that lasts far too long and also makes an audible sound cue to let everybody know that you are going into silent mode now. That was just ridiculous in Modern Warfare 2. I couldn't believe they doubled down on that so hard. If it's going to be there in the form of a field upgrade, I think there should be either no animation at all, it just activates immediately like Modern Warfare 2019, or I could live with a very quick animation like quickly tapping a button on your wrist, for instance. Now, after that, another thing that I feel is important to address for an Infinity Ward CoD in particular is spawns. This is something where they fundamentally changed how spawns worked in Call of Duty with Modern Warfare 2019, and we've been dealing with that spawn system since then. And for both Sledgehammer and Treyarch, they have made a lot of adjustments to that and gotten that spawn system in a much better place than Infinity Ward tends to, in my opinion at least. And so I'd like to see Infinity Ward make some improvements here as well. And just some general notes here. It obviously will vary a little bit by game mode or map design, for instance. But the general issues I've had with the spawns in recent Infinity Ward CoD games are the spawns tend to flip and flow around the map far too much. And this harms map flow, and it significantly limits your ability to effectively flank, and it largely eliminates the concept of map control, which is very important. Now with this, depending on the map, it can lead to a very awkward direction of combat that doesn't align with how the map was designed. So in some cases, you'd have a map that was like very clearly a linear map with two opposing sides and lanes that travel between those, and yet you would end up with everything flowing like diagonally, or even with a more circular flow due to how the spawn system worked, where it wouldn't anchor those spawns toward the ends, and instead it would just spawn people like mid-map, for instance. And that can make an otherwise solid map play horribly. Then on the topic of map control, I totally get that there is a balance with map control, and you want to avoid situations where spawn trapping becomes too heavy. And I believe that's the main thing they were trying to avoid with this new spawn system they introduced in Modern Warfare 2019. But in my eyes, they took this way too far in the opposite direction, which led to a feeling of randomness, as enemies are just constantly coming from multiple directions because the spawn is moving around all the time. There's often no clearly defined our side of the map versus enemy's side of the map at any given moment. And that basic concept should exist throughout a match, and it should be fairly easy for even lower skill players to read and understand at any given moment that, hey, like my team has control of this side, that means enemies are coming from that side. Now, of course, with that, spawns can still flip, but it should be very obvious that like, okay, now a spawn flip has occurred, so now this is our side and that's their side, until enough pressure is put on to cause another one of those flips. I think that basic concept is just so important for a spawn system, so there's actually some coherent flow on the map. And it also just gives players, like even the lesser skilled players, it gives them at least some confidence in the general direction of where the combat is going to be. Additionally, by having a system like this, it allows for much more effective flanking. That's another big issue, is with this system that flows around all the time, it largely destroyed the flanking playstyle, because as you feel like you're getting a really good flank toward the enemy spawn, that spawn is just constantly moving away from you and flowing away from you around the map. Or you start having a bunch of teammates pop up on you because the spawns are anchoring so heavy to teammates, and there goes your element of surprise, which is the whole point of flanking. And then another thing that's so important about having these spawns that aren't flowing around the map like crazy is it gives players more agency over their risk versus reward. So essentially, if in that moment the sides are quite clearly defined where that side of the map's the enemy spawn, this side of the map is our spawn in this moment, it's very easy for even the average player to understand that if you want more kills, you want to push closer to where the enemy side of the map is. That's where there's going to be a higher concentration of enemies, but also as you kill enemies, they're going to be respawning in your general vicinity with knowledge of where you were when you killed them. So your risk is going up, but your reward is also going up because there's more kills to go around. On the flip side of that, if you want lower risk, if you need to take a breath, if you want to go call a streak in, that's where you back off, back toward the safety of your side of the map. And you can take a breath, you can reload an LMG, you can call in a streak. Everything I just described there just seems like obvious basic spawn design, and yet I feel like Infinity Ward has largely gotten away from that, and that has really harmed how their games in particular flow. Now, of course, that does go hand in hand with map design, and that's another area where I feel like a lot of Infinity Ward maps are very hit or miss for me, at least, and what I look for. But even some of the maps that are really well designed, I felt played way worse because of the spawn system. So that is another area on my wish list where I'm hoping they're making some improvements there over their past couple games. And with that, those are the primary sections that I had where I really wanted to like dive deeper and talk about them with some extra depth and detail. Now toward the end of the video, I just wanted to like rapid fire a list of other things on my wish list here. The first thing, I honestly have no idea which direction they're going to go with this, but this is matchmaking. I am hoping we see them go the route of Black Ops 7's matchmaking style, where there's still skill-based matchmaking present. You can absolutely still feel it, but it doesn't feel nearly as strict as it has in recent years. Alongside that, and I would say even more importantly for me, I would love to see persistent lobbies continue like we have in Black Ops 7, or even better than Black Ops 7, where they're completely persistent. I believe in Black Ops 7, each lobby will last for a small handful of games, like 5 matches, for instance, roughly, and then it will disband. But those persistent lobbies have felt great in Black Ops 7 in my eyes, and I'd love to see those return. So you actually have some like rivalries that you can form across multiple matches, and you can learn to adapt to players across multiple matches. Then after that, something that Infinity Ward hasn't really done yet, but the other two studios have done, and it's been very successful for player retention across the year for them. This is, I would love to see the weekly challenge system with gameplay items being awarded almost every single week. That is huge for retention because week after week, there's something that you can actually play with that's added to the game, and that keeps many people coming back for more week after week after week. Then another little thing I wanted to point out here is I don't know what kind of gunsmith system I want to see them use. I'm open to some innovation in this area, but one thing I definitely would like to see that Infinity Ward is not known for are at least some advanced stats on weapons, where you can see like their exact rate of fire values, perhaps exact range and damage values as well would be nice to see. I don't even need it to be as advanced as our Black Ops 7 stats, although I wouldn't be opposed to that as well. I'm asking for even just the basics. And honestly, this is an area where I probably benefit more when they don't show us the stats, because then people have to go elsewhere, like my videos, to find out what those stats are. But I think just for the player base in general, those advanced stats should be available. Then when it comes to perks, again, I'm not going to get too into the weeds with this, because I'm open to them trying some new things potentially. But the main thing is I just don't want to see charging perks from Modern Warfare 2. Based on leaks in the past, it looks like at least we're not going to be seeing that charging perk system. Then for streaks, I would love score streaks to be default at the very least. I'm fine with a toggle. I actually kind of like the idea of being able to just toggle between score streaks or kill streaks without having to use a perk or anything like that. You can just toggle it for yourself. But I think the default should be score streaks rather than kill streaks. Just so at least for the people that don't bother changing it, there is some encouragement for them to play the objective by default. And if they want to actively change away from that, they can do that. But I would guess for tons of players in like Modern Warfare 2, for instance, they didn't even realize you could toggle. And yet it defaulted to kill streaks rather than score streaks. And then on that note, I definitely want to see Specialist return as well. I'm really happy Black Ops 7 brought it back, but I feel like especially in an Infinity Ward game, that Specialist Strike package was just such a big part of their identity for many titles. And it felt really awkward not seeing that in Modern Warfare 2. I know they had the charge perk system, which kind of threw that off. So I'm really hoping that that will return. And there we go. That's pretty much it. That's going to wrap it up for my initial wish list, at least. Obviously, I didn't cover literally every single element of the game. These are just the primary things that stand out in my mind right now as I'm thinking back to recent Infinity Ward titles, as well as just the franchise in general and where things have gone with it. Now, of course, this is just my wish list and some of the things that I would like to see, and I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What's on your current wish list for the next Call of Duty game? What's the type of thing that would get you really excited to buy and play it? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.